My brother straightened his tie in the witness box and told the judge, without blinking once, that I was financially unsophisticated and entirely incapable of managing my share of our grandmother's estate. He said it the way he said everything, with just enough measured warmth to make the blade look like a gift. The judge, a sharp woman in her mid-50s, did not react immediately. She was reading the documents my counsel had submitted just before the recess. She set the papers down slowly, looked at my brother's lawyer, and then looked directly across the courtroom at me. "Does your client understand," she said very quietly, "that the woman he has been describing holds the mortgage on his construction company?" I watched my brother's face go completely white. "My name is Celeste. I am 34 years old. I grew up in Oakville, Ontario, spent a decade being called the unmotivated one by the people who were supposed to know me best. And last Tuesday morning I sat in a Superior Court of Justice courtroom on University Avenue and watched a judge inform my brother that the woman he had just finished mocking under oath was, in fact, his primary creditor. If you have ever had to sit in a room while the people who should love you most decide, confidently and without asking, exactly what your life is worth, drop a comment below and tell me where you are watching from, and stay. Because this story took a long time to build, and it ends exactly where it should. To understand how we ended up in that courtroom on a gray November Tuesday, I have to take you back 3 months. To the afternoon, my grandmother's will was read in the offices of an estate lawyer on King Street West, in downtown Toronto, and my brother decided that was the appropriate occasion to remind everyone what he thought of me. My grandmother had passed in September. She was 81 years old and had lived entirely on her own terms until the very end, which was the thing I admired most about her. She left a modest investment portfolio, a pension that had already wound down, a set of hand-painted china that had belonged to her own mother, and the cottage on Lake Rousseau in Muskoka. The cottage was the thing everyone had always wanted. 40 years in the family. The kind of property that appears on calendars in October when the maples go red and the water goes still. My brother had been using it as a client retreat for the past 3 years. He had, without anyone's knowledge or permission, renovated the boathouse and installed a wine fridge. There were 4 of us in the lawyer's office that afternoon. My brother, my sister-in-law, my mother, and me. My brother had worn a suit. He was 41, the firstborn, and he had spent his entire adult life engineering situations where this fact was felt rather than stated. He ran a property development company in the GTA, commercial builds, mid-range units, the kind of projects that photograph well on pitch decks but bleed cash when the market tightens. He drove a BMW. He spoke about square footage with the intensity other people reserve for their children. My sister-in-law sat beside him in a cream blazer, her posture precise, her expression set to the particular register she used whenever decisions were being made that she intended to influence. And then there was me, plain navy cardigan, end of the table. I had rescheduled 2 calls with my acquisitions team and forwarded 3 term sheets to my legal counsel before walking into that office. But they didn't know that. They thought I worked as a bookkeeper at a small firm on King Street. I had let them think that for 6 years. The will was read. My grandmother had divided the estate evenly between my mother, my brother, and me. The Muskoka property was to be held jointly in trust, all 3 of us named as co-executors, until a unanimous decision was reached on its future. My brother had the document in his hand before the lawyer finished the sentence. He read the relevant section twice, his expression doing something careful and controlled. Then he folded his hands on the table and looked at me the way people look when they are about to be generous at your expense. "Here is the practical reality," he said. "The cottage needs a clear decision. I have been the one managing the property-manager relationship, coordinating the insurance, handling the seasonal closing. I think the cleanest path forward is a buyout. I take on full ownership, and we keep this simple." He slid a piece of paper across the table. A handwritten number, $10,000. "For your share," he said, "not my mother's. Mine specifically. You haven't been up there in years, Celeste. This is fair." My sister-in-law nodded slowly, settling deeper into her chair. "It really is the sensible arrangement," she said, in the gentle, unhurried voice she used when she wanted something to sound like common sense rather than strategy. "The carrying costs on a property like that are significant. Maintenance alone runs in the tens of thousands annually. We just don't want to see you take on something that isn't realistic given your current situation." My mother looked at the table. I looked at the $10,000. Then I looked at my brother. Before we discuss any of that, I said, can you walk me through the TD construction loan, the one registered against the Muskoka property in February? The room went very quiet. My brother's hand moved slightly against the tabletop, a small involuntary adjustment. He recovered quickly the way he always did. That is a routine financing arrangement, a bridge loan for the Scarborough project. Standard corporate structure, it's secured against the asset temporarily while the project cash flows. Right, I said, a $2.3 million bridge loan, secured against property held in a family estate trust, without the co-executor signatures that the trust document explicitly requires. I paused. I'm just wondering which of our signatures you used. The estate lawyer cleared his throat. My sister-in-law's expression changed, just slightly, just enough. My brother's voice dropped to the flat, compressed register I had heard exactly once before, when a contractor had threatened to abandon one of his sites. The loan is being managed. The Scarborough project is on schedule. This has no bearing on today's discussion. I picked up my coat, folded it over my arm, and stood. I won't be signing anything today, I said, but I'll see you at the estate proceedings. I walked out of the office into the October afternoon, crossed King Street, and went into a Tim Hortons on the corner. I ordered a large double-double and sat at a small table by the window. Then I called my director of acquisitions. Pull the full loan portfolio for a company called Ridgeline Group, I said. Every outstanding balance, every lender, every maturity date. And I want the encumbrance history on a property registered to the Harwick Family Trust in Muskoka. There should be a recent TD filing. I watched a streetcar move through the intersection. How quickly can Ironwood move on a distressed acquisition if TD is already classifying the accounts as non-performing? He said if they want the exit end of week. Then find out if they want the exit, I said. I want this closed by Monday. I drank my coffee. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about the aluminum canoe she kept on the dock, and the early mornings when she would take me out on the lake before anyone else was awake, just the two of us, and she would hand me the paddle and let me steer. She used to say, the only thing anyone can ever really take from you is what you let them hold. She had never let anyone hold very much. By Thursday, my team had confirmed what I already suspected. Ridgeline Group was in serious difficulty. 3 over-leveraged commercial projects across the GTA, the Scarborough development, the one secured against my grandmother's cottage, had stalled completely. The general contractor had walked off the site in September after 2 consecutive unpaid invoices. TD had already placed the accounts on internal watch. A credit union holding a second facility had sent a formal demand letter in October. My brother was not a successful developer managing a short-term bridge loan. He was a man who had been quietly drowning for the better part of a year, and he had used a dead woman's cottage as something to grab onto. I authorized Ironwood Capital to acquire the full Ridgeline loan portfolio from TD's distressed asset desk. In the Canadian private credit market, these transactions move without announcements. TD was relieved to get the exit. We closed Friday at noon. By Friday evening, Ironwood Capital held $4.7 million in commercial debt across 3 GTA properties, and the encumbrance on the Muskoka cottage. That same evening, my sister-in-law sent a video to the family group chat. It was 10 seconds long, shot vertically on her phone. She was standing in my grandmother's kitchen at the cottage. I recognized the countertop, the one my grandmother had chosen in 1987 from a catalog she kept in the pantry. My sister-in-law was filming the china cabinet. She picked up one of the hand-painted plates and turned it over, checking the mark on the bottom. Estate sale inventory, she said, in a cheerful businesslike voice. At least 2,000 easily. She set the plate down and opened the silver drawer. The caption she sent with it read, "Getting a head start on organizing." I sat in my car in the parking garage under my office building and watched that video 4 times. Then I called my estate lawyer and told her to file for formal probate review and to prepare a notice of intent under the Ontario Mortgages Act. I told her that Ironwood now held the registered encumbrance and we needed to move before anything walked out of that cottage. The mediation happened 3 weeks later in a boardroom at a Bay Street law firm. My brother's team had insisted on the address, the way they always insist on things designed to establish who matters. My brother arrived with his lawyer, a man named Whitfield, who had built a solid reputation on aggressive estate disputes and expensive rhetoric. My sister-in-law sat to my brother's right in a structured camel coat. I came with my estate counsel, a woman who dresses plainly, speaks quietly, and has a particular gift for asking questions so simple they seem almost courteous until they have already closed the trap. Whitfield began before everyone had fully settled. Let's be direct. My client has demonstrated consistent stewardship of the Muskoka property for the past 3 years. He has managed insurance, maintenance, seasonal preparation. He has invested real time and real resources in this estate. In the interest of resolution, he is prepared to increase the buyout offer to $20,000. He looked at me with the smooth, practiced pity of a man who thought he understood the room. A bookkeeper's income in this real estate environment. He paused just long enough, does not realistically position your client to absorb what this property requires. I was looking at the CN Tower through the boardroom window. That is a very thorough summary, I said. Unfortunately, it has a foundational error. I opened my portfolio and slid a document across the table, a certified copy of a registered encumbrance notice from Ironwood Capital's legal team, filed with the Ontario Land Registry 3 days prior. Ironwood Capital acquired the full Ridgeline Group loan portfolio from TD Bank last Friday, I said. As of that date, we are your client's primary creditor for approximately $4.7 million in outstanding commercial balances across 3 GTA properties. We also hold the registered encumbrance on the Muskoka cottage as collateral on the $2.3 million construction facility. I let the numbers rest in the air for a moment. Before we continue, I'd also like to raise the matter of the china and silverware your client's wife was cataloging at the cottage 3 weekends ago. Those items are estate property and are not available for pre-settlement appropriation. My sister-in-law went a particular shade of still. My brother stared at the document, then he looked up at me. For the first time in my memory, I watched him try to find something to say and find nothing. Whitfield set his pen down. He looked at my brother with the careful neutrality of a professional suddenly recalculating his invoice risk. We're going to need time to review these filings. Of course, I said. We'll see you in court. The Superior Court of Justice on University Avenue on a Tuesday morning in November. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and recycled air conditioning. My brother arrived composed, his second-chair counsel beside him, his suit pressed, his expression set to the particular register of controlled suffering that plays well before a judge. He was sworn in and performed beautifully under direct examination, measured, sorrowful, patient. He described my grandmother with the warmth of a man who had actually been present when she was alive, which, for the record, he had not been. He framed me as someone he worried about. He used the word concerned 4 times. He said I had been absent from the family's practical responsibilities for years. He submitted the family trust document and a property appraisal showing the cottage at $1.4 million. He submitted 3 years of insurance receipts in his name. Then my counsel stood up. You testified that your financial position enables you to independently manage the Muskoka property, she said pleasantly. What is the current outstanding balance on the Ridgeline Group's Scarborough construction account? Whitfield objected, the judge overruled. My brother shifted. There are multiple project accounts, it is a complex structure. The Scarborough facility specifically, my counsel said, now held by Ironwood Capital, current outstanding balance. A long pause, approximately $2.3 million. And the payment status as of last month? There was a cash flow delay on that account. The account is in default, my counsel said in the tone of someone confirming a postal code. The contractor left the site September 9th after 2 consecutive unpaid invoices. TD had classified this as non-performing by October 1st, prior to its sale to Ironwood. Is that consistent with your understanding? My brother looked at Whitfield. Whitfield studied the table. There were delays, my brother said. My counsel picked up her next folder without any particular emphasis. The trust document requires all 3 co-executors to authorize any registered encumbrance against estate property. Did you obtain your sister's signature before filing the $2.3 million construction facility against the Muskoka property? The courtroom became the kind of quiet that accumulates rather than falls. She was notified, my brother said. A handwriting analysis commissioned by the defense and submitted as Exhibit D, my counsel said, concludes with high probability that the co-executor signature on the bank's application file was not written by your sister. The Canada Revenue Agency has been forwarded a copy of this analysis, given the encumbrance also affects the estate's tax filing position. She paused, This is not a cash flow delay. This is a forged signature on a registered financial instrument. From the gallery, my sister-in-law made a very small sound, the kind of sound that happens when something internal gives way. My brother's hands gripped the edges of the witness box. My counsel turned to the judge. Your Honor, Ironwood Capital holds the encumbrance on the estate's primary asset. My client is both a co-executor of this estate and the founding principal of Ironwood Capital. The plaintiff's motion to remove her as co-executor is not simply a family dispute. It is, functionally, an attempt to eliminate the estate's creditor from decision-making over the asset that creditor holds security against. The judge looked at my brother. Then she looked at me. Then she looked back at the courtroom as though it had surprised her. The plaintiff, she said slowly, filed a motion to remove the co-executor, who, as it turns out, is the mortgage holder on his primary construction loan and the encumbrance holder on the estate's most significant asset. Whitfield stood. Your Honor, my client had no knowledge. He had no knowledge, the judge said, that his sister owned his debt. She called a recess. The hallway outside courtroom 7 on a Tuesday morning is not a dramatic place. Wooden benches along the walls, the smell of floor wax, a window facing University Avenue where the trees had gone bare and the sky was flat white. My brother found me there. He had loosened his tie slightly. The composed man who had walked into that building 2 hours ago had gone somewhere, and the person standing in front of me now looked like someone I hadn't seen in a very long time, the version of my brother that existed before he learned that certainty was easier than effort. Celeste, he said. I did not look away from the window. How long? He asked. Have I had the company? 6 years. I watched a streetcar move south. Have I known about your loans? 4 months, long enough to understand exactly what you were doing. He exhaled, a long poured-out sound. The cottage was meant to be short-term collateral. I was going to clear the facility before the estate even reached probate. You were never supposed to. You forged my name, I said. He didn't answer that. You offered me $10,000, I said, for an asset your company had borrowed $2 million against. You sat in that lawyer's office and you offered me $10,000, and you let your wife explain to me, very kindly, that I couldn't afford the carrying costs. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. She meant exactly what she said. I turned and looked at him. He was having difficulty with eye contact. You have been deciding what I am worth since we were children. You decided, and you never once went back to check whether you were right. Behind us, the courtroom doors opened. My sister-in-law came through them alone. She had been called briefly after the recess, the court establishing the extent of her prior knowledge. She had not known about the signature. That part was genuine. She had known the finances were tight. She had not known he had used the estate to patch it. She stopped in the hallway when she saw us together. The application at the bank, she said to him. Her voice was precise and quiet, the way things get when someone is working very hard to stay controlled. You handed me something at the kitchen table in August, and you said it was routine trust documentation. You said the state lawyer needed countersignatures for the tax filing. My brother said it is complicated. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Something moved across her face that I had never seen from her before. Not apology exactly, but the thing that sits just next to it. I'm going to need to make some calls, she said, mostly to herself. She walked to the far end of the hallway and sat down on a bench and took out her phone. My brother stood where he was. I picked up my bag. My counsel was waiting by the elevator with her files in order and the rest of the morning still to get through. Ironwood will send formal correspondence regarding the Ridgeline accounts this week, I said. There are structured repayment terms. You should retain commercial insolvency counsel immediately, separate from Whitfield. The CRA involvement is going to run on its own track regardless of how the estate resolves. I paused. And get a real estate lawyer to look at the Scarborough property. The licensed insolvency trustee is going to want a full picture. What about the cottage? He said. I thought about my grandmother, the canoe, the flat silver mornings on the lake before anyone else woke up. The way she always handed me the paddle and let me choose the direction. That gets decided through the estate process, I said, the way it should have been from the first day. Ridgeline Group did not survive the winter. The Scarborough project wound down formally in November when the second contractor declined to remobilize without a fresh letter of credit that no lender would provide. The CRA audit widened in December, following the forged signature investigation, into a broader review of the corporate accounts. By January, my brother was working with a licensed insolvency trustee under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act. My sister-in-law filed for separation in December. Their Oakville house, which had its own encumbrances neither of them had disclosed to the other, was listed in February and sold in April at a number that covered the mortgage and not much else. My mother and I settled the estate together in the spring. The Muskoka cottage is held properly now, in a trust with 2 co-executors and every signature where it belongs. I went up in May, first time in years. I stood on the dock in the early morning when the lake was glassy and the air still smelled like cold water and pine, and I stayed out there for a long time thinking about what it costs to let people make you small. I had let it go on for a long time. Longer than I should have. There is a particular exhaustion that comes from choosing invisibility as a form of armor, from building something real and keeping it quiet because the peace of being underestimated felt safer than the exposure of being seen. I built Ironwood Capital in 6 years without any of them knowing, and for a long time I told myself that was wisdom. But then my brother forged my name, on a dead woman's estate, and used the proceeds to cover debt he had been hiding. And I understood that some silences are not armor, they are just permission. In June, Ironwood Capital partnered with a legal aid organization in Toronto that provides pro bono estate and financial counseling to women navigating family asset disputes. Women handed documents at kitchen tables and told, very kindly, to just sign here, this is standard, you can trust me. In 4 months, we have helped over 40 women understand what they actually own and what rights they actually have. I named the initiative after my grandmother. She always did know the difference between what was hers and what someone else simply wanted.